Welcome, everybody, to It's Fine, an official podcast of Broken Arrow Public Schools on the ArrowVision Network. My name is Adam Foreman. I'm the Assistant Director of Fine Arts for Broken Arrow, and today it's all fine arts all the time. This episode would not be possible without the generous support of our One Club sponsors, First National Bank of Broken Arrow, TTCU Federal Credit Union, Ascension St. John, Tulsa Bone and Joint, and the Arrow Group. Today's episode is all about fine arts, especially fine arts with this gentleman sitting over here across from me. This is Adam Wiencken, percussion specialist for Broken Arrow Schools. How you doing, Adam?
Doing great.
It's weird saying my name back to somebody else. I'm like, what's going on here? And then my co-host today, the director of ArrowVision, Mr. Greg Spencer. Howdy.
Good to be here today.
It's great to lob bald things back and forth to another guy. You know, Adam's got this great head of hair. You're in trouble. Before we get into anything, let's talk about you, because it's about percussion, and most notably the Broken Arrow High School Indoor Percussion Ensemble. But they don't exist without their leader, which is you. So give us some background about your educational journey to where you are today, probably starting around college area.
Sure. So I grew up in Northwest Indiana, and then I went to Indiana University for my undergraduate, graduated in 2010, spent a year teaching in Texas, but then this position came open at Broken Arrow, and a job like this is something I've always really wanted. So it opened up, I interviewed, all the stars aligned, and I've been here at Broken Arrow since June or July of 2011.
So for the people that don't know, because even though you're from Indiana, you knew a lot about Broken Arrow. Broken Arrow being known, in the band world. Talk a little bit about that and kind of what your familiarity was with BA at the time.
Sure. So Indiana is a very big marching band state, just like Oklahoma. And I was teaching a handful of groups in the Indianapolis area and in Indiana, Castle High School, Center Grove, and I actually student taught at Carmel High School. And all three of those schools compete in Bands of America. And of course, Broken Arrow has been a Bands of America participant for many, many, many years. So before I ever came here, I already knew what Broken Arrow was, but I actually remember vividly the first time I saw the Broken Arrow band. It was like 2008 at Grand Nationals. Actually,
what was the show? Do you remember the show?
Runaway.
Runaway. Gotcha.
So actually, I knew the name of the school. I knew Broken Arrow, but never see them live. My concert band director in college, he did some time at Oklahoma State. And Grand Nationals was going on. He actually kind of plugged Broken Arrow, and he said, hey, if you guys aren't doing anything, go to Grand Nationals tonight. Broken Arrow's performing in prelims at 10:30 at night or something like that. So I figured, okay, I'll go check him out. And
why not?
So there I was, I got a ticket for $15 or whatever, and grabbed a couple friends and saw the Broken Arrow band for the first time in the nosebleeds at Lucas Oil Stadium. And then the following year, I remember I was student teaching at Carmel High School, and we were at Grand Nationals, and I vividly remember turning a corner and seeing the Broken Arrow band leave warm-up to go to music warm-up. And I remember seeing Mr. Davis and then the front rank of the group, and they all looked like they were 15 feet tall. And it really kind of struck me. I still remember that moment.
Just because of their stature and just how amazing
it was. It was always just such a professional, larger-than-life persona. There was always this mystique around Broken Arrow. So from that time in 2008, 2009, I knew Broken Arrow. And of course, as they were starting to continue to refine, and they started to compete and start to raise the level of what they were doing and start to place higher, and everybody started noticing a little bit more. So by the time 2011 came around, of course, I wanted to be a part of that program. I didn't even know where Broken Arrow was.
Let me draw you a map real quick.
So, like I said, Broken Arrow's had a national reputation for so many years, and they, the marching band especially impacts a lot of people, including me.
Well, and you were from Carmel, and they're no slouch either. I've seen their name tons of times in national things.
So, like I said, Broken Arrow is a national brand, and me being from Indiana and that impression and the program and what they're doing and all the things that are offered here, of course, if that opportunity came up, and then I'm just happened to be lucky that it was at the right time, and I was a candidate that they felt like they could take a chance on when I was pretty young, and I've been here ever since.
So the groups that you work with, are they all percussion related here in the district, or do you work with all sorts of different groups of kids?
Depends.
Let me rephrase that. What are the groups of kids that you work with in the band department?
Primarily, my focus is working with percussion students, but I also teach the jazz band here with Jace Davison, and I was fronting that band for the past 9 or 10 years, but with him coming in this year, he's really starting to take the reins of that, and will probably take the reins going forward. But also I work with every concert band at the high school and freshman academy level, usually with a percussionist, but I don't really spend a lot of time with the wind players, other than maybe I might be in the band class, but I really try to zone my focus in on percussionists solely because that's really what my job is. And then as much as I possibly can, I try to go see the middle school students. I just finished up doing some screenings with beginner kids of kids who are interested in switching to percussion at the 7th grade level. And then, I try to make an appearance, especially around this time, a little bit earlier, to see the 8th graders before they prepare for contests. And then again, here in a few weeks, before we start doing marching band auditions and band auditions for the 9th grade year. So I don't get to see the middle school students as much, but I have a great staff that also, private lesson teachers and master class teachers that could see them. But for the most part, I'm seeing just percussionists 9 through 12. And as much as I can, I try to see the middle school students as well.
Well, and Horace, are you going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, talking a little bit about the, stature of the Broken Arrow band program, that also allows you to do a lot of things nationally as well. I know a lot of you guys stay really busy doing different things, being hired by other programs, colleges. Talk about some of the things that you participate away from Broken Arrow as well.
Sure. So I do a lot of judging in the winter with Indoor Percussion. There are multiple circuits throughout the country, state circuits that I do some judging. And I don't do a ton of it because, I'm still doing Broken Arrow and we have our rehearsal schedule and things like that. But I'm able to do that. I'm very involved with actually writing and arranging. Most of the time it's the battery percussion, but sometimes some front ensemble percussion for mostly high school groups throughout the country. So even some of our quote unquote competitors, there's groups that I write for that are also competing at the same show as Broken Arrow. But that's another kind of thing that I've been really passionate about, is being able to create and write. And I do that with Broken Arrow too. I write all the drumline music for Broken Arrow and the marching band and the Indoor Percussion. And then I'm also doing some percussion arranging and I'm leading the caption at the Spirit of Atlanta Drum and Bugle Corps. Mostly it's high school students, but also college students as well. So somewhere between the ages of essentially 16 and 22. It's an independent drum corps and based out of Atlanta, Georgia. That's been a really unique and awesome experience to be able to create and teach, but in a different environment. And I feel like, the way that we all kind of put shows together and create together and work together is different. So I really enjoy that process as well, working with other students, older students as well, and working with other people that just can give me some different ideas of how to go about a lot of the same kind of projects. So I definitely keep myself very busy.
Yeah, you don't sound busy at all. Just like you're just twiddling your thumbs over there.
I'm so lucky to be able to have these opportunities, and as much as I possibly can, I'll say yes. I see it as a learning experience, and I also see it as I can be an ambassador for this program at Broken Arrow. I wear that proudly wherever I go. I'm wearing the BA on my sleeve. So
now you're the one who's 15 foot tall to everybody when they see you. You're the one.
I don't know about that, but I just, like I said, I'm very proud to be representing Broken Arrow. And the same thing we tell our kids is you're always representing BA no matter where you go. And like I said, I'm very lucky to have those opportunities. And of course, that all comes secondary to my responsibilities here at Broken Arrow. But, I'm able to keep myself pretty busy, but I love creating, I love working, and I love working with students of all levels.
So you mentioned the Pride of Broken Arrow marching band, and so you help write the parts for that part, the Grand Nationals, everything that involve that. How does that work with you and the person who designs the show? Like, I know there's so many moving parts in that. How do you fit into that whole formula with them?
Musically, it's Jim Wunderlich and myself, and actually Jim Wunderlich and myself, we also write the Indoor Percussion show together. So Jim was brought on in 2014 as an arranger with us in the marching band. And over time that has evolved to essentially Jim is writing the full score. So musically, he kind of tracks everything. And then in terms of the battery percussion, the drum line, I fill that out and write all of that. So we work together in tandem to make that happen. A little bit different process, writing a marching band show versus an indoor percussion show. But you also have to coordinate that with the visual designers and the program coordinators, Wes Cartwright in the fall and Leon May, our drill writer. And then in the winter with Indoor Percussion, Noah Bellamy. We have choreographers, Jim Moore, that we share between the fall and the winter. We have Zach Schlicker, who's in as well. So there's definitely a different way of kind of doing it. They're also two different activities, similar, but almost like cousins, But essentially, you kind of get a flow of who's going to go first and how do you kind of write that together. A little bit differences between how marching band and indoor percussion is put together. Mostly number of students. Indoor percussion is much smaller. It's also performed in a basketball court on an arena versus a marching band field. So there are definitely different challenges and nuance that kind of go back and forth between both activities.
So you mentioned that indoor percussion. Tell the listener who has no knowledge of that, what exactly is indoor percussion?
Sure. So essentially, indoor percussion is, if you look at the Pride or look at any marching band, if you take the drum line and the grounded front ensemble, the front, essentially pluck them out from the marching band and have a show 100% just with them on a basketball court in the winter. That's in the most simplistic forms, that's what we do.
See, that painted a very vivid picture for me. I totally get it.
It's a lot more complex than that. And we also have additional not ensembles, but additional sections with what we do. We also have a visual ensemble, which is mostly dancers and choreography. It's a different way to get more kids involved. It also gives us a lot of different options as designers to be able to use them in unique ways. So every group's a little bit different. We also even have students that are with us that might play a synthesizer, but they also are wind players. So if we have a chance to be able to feature them on their wind instrument, we can try to do that too. So you have a lot of options in indoor percussion, but essentially it's all under the umbrella of WGI, which is Winter Guard International. Basically what that started with Winter Guard is the color guard from the fall. They're doing the same thing, but just in the winter. You just take the color guard and you put them on a gym floor and create a show. That's what they're doing. And then roughly 25, 30 years ago, WGI also created a percussion division, which is what we do. And then they also, 5 to 10 years ago, created a winds division. So there's also schools that will bring wind players and do kind of the same thing that we're doing. So there's 3 kind of different categories within WGI. We participate in the percussion version, which is ever growing, and it seems like every single year there's more and more groups and more schools that decide to field different ensembles.
Well, and this was kind of a pet project of yours, something that you wanted to bring here. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in that and how long we've been doing it.
Sure. So when I was teaching in Indiana is kind of one of the major hubs of indoor percussion and Winter Guard. It's very coastal, but it's also very, very prominent in the Midwest, in Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan. So pretty much everybody in Indiana has a Winter Guard and or a indoor percussion group. And I was fortunate enough to teach at Center Grove, which at that time, and they're still a perennial finalist in Scholastic World. We were second. We were the silver medalist the first year I got to teach there. So I got to be in the ground floor of how that actually happens. And I saw firsthand of what it does for students. And when I got to Broken Arrow, WGI wasn't really a thing yet for the program, but I also knew there had to be an infrastructure put in place. So, when I first got to Broken Arrow, I wanted to learn more about how Broken Arrow does what they do, because I came in and the group was runner-up at Grand Nationals. Like this ensemble knows what they're doing. I wanted to learn about the kids, about the program, and get that under my feet first. And maybe down the road, we can explore maybe doing indoor percussion. And honestly, when I first got here, we didn't have as big of a drum staff. I had maybe 1 or 2 alumni that were still around that were able to essentially work it in as a part-time job. But to do indoor percussion, it takes a village, not only of parent volunteers, but also staff members to do it at the level that I felt like we needed to do it at. So after 2 or 3 years, 4 years of being here, I started to kind of put those pieces together and getting more people involved. And essentially, once I had a staff of 3 or 4 that could be here all the time, and again, the kids started to get to know me a little bit better and what my vision for where I wanted to go. Our first indoor season was 2015, was the winter and spring of 2015. That's when we started. So we're in the terms of WGI, we're still a fairly young ensemble. There are some ensembles that are in their 30th year, and this is just part of the culture. They haven't known anything different. We're starting to get there, so we're still at some level just still trying to develop and maintain and continue to rise the level expectation of what we're doing. But essentially the infrastructure was there with the program. So the good news is the marching band, I've always been really proud of how we travel, how we present ourselves and how organized it is. So I basically learned how that operates with our kids, and they're trained to know how to do what they're supposed to do on trips. So when I started the program, I didn't have to reinvent the wheel, and just kind of had to adapt it and evolve it to this particular kind of program. But, like I said, after about 4 years, I was like, I think we're ready to do this. And it definitely didn't come up without any growing pains, because it's definitely it's a lot of time. It's a lot of effort, especially after a grueling marching band season. It can be a lot. But again, I've seen what this activity can do for young adults. And once especially as percussionists, when you see this activity, it's just like transformative. So I wanted the students to be able to have those experiences. And honestly, you can ask any one of us staff members and band directors here. We're all about just giving our students the best possible performance experiences while they're with us. And this is something that especially with percussionists, is something that I didn't want them to miss out on. So it's a pretty transformative thing for them.
Well, and with the Winter Guard, it keeps their skills sharpened too, but between marching seasons as well. I mean, and keeps them involved in something.
Absolutely.
So tell us about a typical show. What does a typical indoor percussion show look like?
So that's a great question. So it's typically a little bit shorter than a marching band show. Marching band shows can range anywhere from roughly 8 to 11 minutes. Our show is usually around like 6 to 6.5 minutes long. It's essentially there's so much variety, but essentially the front ensemble takes on a lot of the melodic and harmonic structure of what, when you listen to a band, that's all in the band instruments. Okay, but now in indoor percussion, that's all up front, especially electronically, with synthesizers and sampling and those kinds of things. That's where you hear a lot of the color, very cinematic kind of sounds to what you're doing. Again, you can also hear mic'd instruments. Like this year, our program, we have a trumpet player, we have a clarinet player, and then eventually we have a euphonium player. A lot of times you'll also hear singing and or narration that's actually usually sampled. But then the battery kind of provides a lot of the rhythmic and energy and structure to what they're doing. But I would say one of the biggest differences with WGI and indoor percussion is the vocabulary of what's asked of the students is at a way higher level than maybe what's asked in a Bands of America event. A Bands of America event is more about the totality of the whole band, the whole music ensemble, meaning the woodwinds, the brass, and the percussion, and how they all meld together. And then if you combine those elements with visually, and especially with the color guard, it's just a much bigger project. You know what I mean? With WGI and with percussion, it's a little bit more zoned in on skill sets. And even within WGI, the way that the classification works is actually not by school size, which is typically what a lot of groups do in marching band. You're grouped by how big your school is, like 6A here in Oklahoma, 6A2, whatever. In WGI, it's actually based on skill set, and you have A class, open class, and world class. A class is typically beginning skills. Open class is typically intermediate. In Scholastic World is advanced skills. Scholastic meaning it's involved with a school.
Do you determine those levels as an instructor?
Yeah.
Like you kind of say, my kids are pretty good.
Well,
they're Scholastic.
It doesn't, it just kind of depends, because it depends upon what you want to do with the students. So if you want to challenge your students at that level, you have to know kind of the skill sets that are going to be evaluated. So for example, we compete in Scholastic World, and we've been in Scholastic World ever since 2016. We've stayed in that classification. We started out in open, and the way that WGI works is there's a very, very rigorous classification kind of system where everybody that's in an A or open, they get essentially videoed, and then a team advisory board looks at those videos and they see, okay, is that an A class group? Is that an open class group? And they really try to move groups around to classify them in the right classification. So there might be a group who might go to a WGI event and they're going to be an open class, and that team or that chief judge is watching this group, and after their prelims performance, they'll get a knock on the shoulder and say, that's world class. So And so
Wow.
tonight-
Does it ever go in the opposite direction?
So I was gonna say, so can you get like relegated like FIFA?
Yeah, it's like,
does not
listen,
go down.
you're going back down. I'm sorry, you are not an academic or whatever you just said.
That does not happen. That does not happen. But that's what I mean is you can choose as an instructor what class you would like to compete in. However, depending upon how you write your show, it's going to be evaluated through filters of teachers, and then chief judges of whether you're in the correct class or not. So WGI is a little bit different. So you'll have groups that are in our classification, Scholastic World. That high school might only have 1,000 students at it, but the way that their percussion program has evolved, they're doing world-class skills.
How big is this program nationally? WGI, like how many schools or kids involved with it?
It's growing. So just going off of the World Championships. So in percussion, I think there's about 30 in Scholastic World. There's maybe 50 in Scholastic Open, and probably 70 to 80 in Scholastic A. And that's just the groups that go to the championships. That's not counting every circuit around the country. There's also an entire other section of WGI called independent groups, which is essentially not affiliated with a school. It could be university. It could be just like a drum and bugle corps.
And those are just set up independently by just somebody says,
Exactly.
I want to put a group together.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And even with that, there's A, Open, and World. So there's lots of different ways to be involved. I don't have the specific numbers, but I can tell you that the number of groups from year to year continues to grow exponentially, especially with the addition of the WINS groups. That's starting to take off as well. But like Winter Guard, Scholastic A, I think there's 130 Scholastic A groups going to World Championships. That's just one class. You know
Good
what I mean?
grief.
So, like I said, this is a fairly strong and very active circuit. Even in our local circuit in Oklahoma, it's called Winter Guard and Percussion of Oklahoma. It's actually percussion groups and Winter Guards are all part of the same circuit. I think we just eclipsed 100 groups in the state.
Wow.
So it's a very, very growing activity.
But not all of them have to compete at the national level, right?
That's
Just,
correct,
or
yeah.
some just out there just to have a good time with it.
They'll only participate in the state circuit. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
just kind of depends.
So you guys had your strongest finish ever last year, right?
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that, kind of the evolution of it, and kind of what the outlook is for this upcoming trip that you guys have to Dayton pretty soon.
Yeah, because I want to hear about this year's show. I'm curious.
So, yeah, I mean, we went to WGI in 2017 and 2018 in Scholastic World. We've gone to regional events essentially every year, but 2017 was the first time we went to World Championships, and it was an incredible learning experience. We were still super young. We had a very senior class heavy graduate before 2017, but again, one of the biggest reasons we go to WGI is so the kids can be a part of what the highest levels of the activity is, not only in Scholastic with high schools, but also to be able to see all the independent groups. So, we went for the first time in 2017. We finished in 18th, and we were a semifinalist. 15 groups make finals in our class, and it was a great learning experience, and not only for the students but also our parents. This is a whole different ball game than Bands of America. It's just way different. And at that time, again, we were in just year 3. So it was very, very new. Like year 3 of the Broken Arrow Band was 1931. You know what I mean? So this was
The year I was born. Feels like it someday.
We went the following year, made a lot of great adjustments, and then we were way better and ended up in 18th again. So, but that was another learning experience with the kids is like, we're way better. We've made a lot of great adjustments, but guess what? Everybody else is way better too.
Right. Right.
So then we made some bigger adjustments with how we put our design team together, who's involved, and just, again, continue to refine and learn. You got to put yourself out there. We could have played it safe and tried to stay in another classification and try to make finals and say, yay, but I don't think we would have learned as much if we didn't do that at that time. 2019, we started making some big changes. We went to a couple regional events and started hanging with some of the more nationally recognized groups. And then this past year in 2022, we went to WGI World Championships again for the first time since 2018. None of those kids have ever been at WGI before. And our goal was just, we want to play on Saturday night. We want to be in finals. Can we be in finals? And we were 10th in prelims, which was cool. All right, we got there. We're in the mix. ended up in 8th in semifinals, so we were in, and then actually jumped a spot and finished in 7th in the finals competition. So,
I mean, 7 in the world, that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, it was an incredible milestone and great thing for our students. And again, to be a part of that, you can ask those students who were in that group last year, the finals experience at WGI World Class Finals is really unlike anything in all of pageantry. And one example I'll give you is, this is something that doesn't happen really especially in marching band, is the warm up. It sounds odd, but the warm up, when we go warm up before the show, it's not uncommon to have 500 people around us watching us warm up.
Random. Why? So what is that? What is that about?
Well, again, over the course of 3 days at World Championships, all these different classifications have their rounds and prelims, semis, and finals. World Class Finals is the last event of the weekend. And essentially all the other groups who are around competing, they all want to go see World Class Finals. It's the top level of scholastic, of high school, and it's also the top level independent. So it's one of the, it's the premier kind of spot, Saturday night. And a lot of these students who were competing earlier that weekend, and especially in A or Open, they're done by 5 o'clock, and Saturday evening. So they all want to go to finals. And watching these groups up close and personal is kind of one of the special things about WGI. So we roll into the parking lot and there's just a sea of people. Like we have to honk the horn so people can move. So
like the Beatles.
So they can let us get into our spot. And other groups are already well on their way of warming up and things like that. So it was cute. We're pulling into finals. And I already kind of knew all of this, but I wanted to watch our kids and our parents.
Right. Check their reaction from it.
So I heard a voice in the back of the bus kind of just innocently say, "Are they going to watch us warm up?" I didn't even respond. I was like, "Oh yeah, they are."
Or you just devilish is like, "Yo,
So we were able to get into our spot, and then our truck, we start unloading our truck, and our 4 snare drummers get their snare drums off the truck and set them up on stands and just start playing like a simple exercise. And it's just all these people, like magnets, just come surround them. And closer to them than I am to you, they have their phones out taking video. And after they finish a rep, if it's a good rep, like people cheer and clap. They feel like complete rock stars.
I want to go now. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It was really cool to see our kids in that environment feel like just total rock stars. And it was also cool to see the director, Dr. Pence and Mr. Davis were there too. And they stopped by the warm up before they went inside to watch. And I also watched our parents. They had no clue this was kind of what happens. And I saw them walk up and they're like, what is happening right now? So they get up on the semi and just take videos and pictures. And there's, I could share these with you later, but there's pictures of us full battery. We start to just do our warm-ups, and it's completely surrounded with people just wanting to watch the kids. And then when they play really well, like people clap for them. And this is the warm-up so that there is nothing like that kind of environment experience. And that's one of the reasons I wanted these kids to learn, not only have that experience, but learn what it takes to get there. And those groups in 2017, 2018 worked just as hard, but we were still trying to learn about what we were trying to do to get to that level. Because I wanted that for them so bad. And I'm so happy for that group last year that they were able to achieve that and have those kind of experiences.
Well, and that's to me, that's one of the cool things about some of our fine arts groups, that unless you've been to these trips, you don't know about it.
If you don't know, you don't know.
If you're in Indianapolis with the Pride during Grand Nationals, I mean, it's just phenomenal. The treatment that you guys get, the attention, show choirs going to different places around the country and getting a lot of attention, and you guys as well. It's a very unique thing that a lot of people don't realize.
So tell me about this year's show. Give me a snapshot of what your show's like. Because I sort of know, but I want the listener to know.
So the show this year is entitled Transcend. And a lot of the visual and musical ideas are derived from the movie Interstellar. So
which is, for those listening, a space age romp through space.
So what our kind of take on it, the emotional connection of the show is what are you willing to sacrifice for the ones that you love? That's essentially the message of the show. And honestly, it's the message of that movie as well. But we really liked the scenery, we liked the music, we liked essentially the vibe. but we also like the story of the show to make you care about it. But it's going to be a very special show. Really cool use of some of the props that we have. If you come or check out the show, and again, we're trying to hit on all three levels of emotional, intellectual, kind of effect, so that no matter who's watching the show, you can take something from it. If you're more of an intellectual person, then you might like a lot of the ideas that we have that are more interpretive. But also, if you're looking for something that's more emotional, then essentially the tag of the transcend and the love theme of what would you do to sacrifice for each other, that's essentially what our program is. And I think as we get to the end, it's also a great message that I can tell our students. We're all here sacrificing our time from loved ones, sacrificing our personal time, trying to manage all of our different things that we do. And I think one thing when I talk with Jim Wunderlich, who's our program coordinator, I say, can we find something that I know that our Broken Arrow students can identify with? And I think we can all identify with what would you do to sacrifice for things, what would you sacrifice for the ones that you love? Now, in this particular show, it's more of manipulating time and space and those kinds of things, but that's essentially what the core of the show is.
And you're doing it all in 7 minutes.
I mean,
that's pretty amazing to get all that. Because like if you go to a competition, do the judges get like a packet that you explain the premise of your show, or
you can provide them essentially a show info, but you got to keep it short and sweet, because they're going to look at it for maybe 15 to 30 seconds before you begin. So our little write-up,
it's like the elevator pitch, kind of
a little bit,
and not the Avatar pitch.
It's maybe 2 sentences, and you can be as descriptive as you want or as open as you want. We kind of like to set the scene, but not necessarily. I don't want to tell you everything.
Right.
I don't want that. I want you to watch it and interpret it the way that you like. How does it land for you? But get you in the right frame of mind and provide the framework of what we're going for. But yes, the judges are able to view that essentially before you begin the program.
Gotcha. So you have World Championships coming up then at the end of April. And then is
there a way for like flow marching or anybody?
Yes. So
live stream of that?
April 20th, 21st, and 22nd is the WGI World Championships in Dayton, Ohio. All events are live streamed. And usually, I think they just started doing this the next day. They do a rebroadcast. So if you miss it live, you can catch it the next day. Through Flow Marching, it does require a paid subscription.
We'll put the link right here.
Here, not so much here.
Sure. But then you can watch all events, all classifications, and all different venues. We compete in percussion scholastic world.
I've learned a whole lot today.
It's a lot, yeah.
Like I see the Indoor Percussion logo places, and you never really grasp it. You've explained it very well. Well, do you have anything else you'd like to add? I just feel like you've just been talking so much. I feel bad that I'm just like, just talk. I'm just sitting over here. But you've done a great job explaining all that.
Usually before we wrap things up, we usually have some rapid fire questions and stuff. But I don't have any. Of those. But I have one for you this time. So you had some big personal news in your life here pretty recently, where something that happened to you that you were waiting on for a long, long time came true. What was it?
I'm curious. I don't know what's going on.
I'm now a season ticket holder for the Chicago Cubs.
He's got to be the only season ticket holder for the Cubs.
Under the age of 70?
I was going to say, in all of Oklahoma, probably. I mean, at least Broken Arrow. I mean, how did that come about?
Yeah, so, I mean, I've been a Cubs fan, a Chicago sports fan, because growing up, like I said, I'm from Indiana, but from Northwest Indiana, about 60 miles from Chicago. So growing up near Chicago in the Chicagoland area, that's essentially most people are Chicago fans. My dad and my brothers, my family, we're all Chicago sports fans. Cubs, the Bulls, and the Bears, essentially.
No White Sox?
No.
Well, you can't be. You got to be one or the other. You can't do both.
No. So watching Cubs baseball with my dad is a very early memory I've had, and listening to Cubs baseball on the radio while being outside, playing outside as a kid. That's very much a part of my childhood and growing up, and the highs and the very many lows of being a Chicago Cubs fan.
And how long have you been on the wait list?
I've been on the wait list to my best memory, at least 15 years.
Wow.
So
that's exclusive.
Yeah, it's a smaller stadium, popular
Right.
team. It takes a while.
So, I usually try to go to a game every year, but you have to plan like your summer around it or whatever. But I honestly was like, you know what, one of these days I would love to have the ability to have those kinds of opportunities. And I put my name in kind of like, hey, maybe when I retire, I can have this opportunity. And I usually every year will get an update and it'll say update on the season ticket holder waiting list. And I open it.
You're a loser. Stop asking.
Well, it'll give you the number you are in line. And it's usually like, it's not going to happen this year. You are currently 106,248.
Well, and I imagine when they won the World Series in 2016, you probably thought it was way down the road.
Exactly.
And of course, they're in a little bit of a rebuild right now. So
and I was at Game 5 of the 2016 World Series.
Wow.
And I told Mr. Davis when the Cubs were starting to make a run, I told him in September that year, I said, well, just want to let you know, if the Cubs are in the World Series, I'm going to one of those games. He just kind of laughed.
I don't care about marching season, by God.
He kind of laughed it off, and I said, no, I'm serious. I'm going to one of those games.
No, I'm for real. This is happening.
So anyways, yeah.
That's exciting for you, man.
So yeah, thank you. So it happened. Honestly, like it's kind of cheesy, but like it made me pretty emotional. Just because, I've always been a big believer of having interests outside of what you do. I love what I do. I'm a workaholic, but I think it's also really important to have other interests to kind of keep things balanced as much as you can. And I've been a big sports fan, especially with Chicago sports, and having this kind of opportunity for me is a way to share it with my family. I'm hoping that the tickets stayed with my family long after I'm ever here.
You have to create a legacy now,
and
you have to do that. There's no choice.
Anybody,
we move to the back of the line.
Well, that's the thing too, is if you don't take the opportunity, you do go back to the bottom of the line. So, Dr. Pence and I talked, and, Dr. Pence is my lovely wife and my much better half. And this opportunity came up, and we were, luckily, with a lot of my other gigs that I've been doing, I do my best to save as much of that as possible. So that kind of just stashes away, but we see it as maybe a potential investment opportunity. But
yeah, there's no doubt you're going to be able to make some resale, because there's a lot of games, 81 games a year. Again, it's
family. We're all Cubs fans. So many friends around the country are Cubs fans. So again, it's a way for me to be like, you know what, you'll never have to pay anything over market price for what these tickets are. So hopefully it's a way that I could share that with others.
Does it impress you at all that this hand shook Rick Sutcliffe's hand?
Yes.
Does that impress you? Okay, just want you to, I did that. That's my Chicago awesome. Cubs connection right there. Yeah. I believe it was 1987. Yeah. And I was at Busch Stadium because I grew up in St. Louis for a time. And met him. Yeah, trust me, I know. My dad was a Cubs fan when we moved into Cardinal country. It was like the most, no way, unholy thing. But yeah, they were playing there, and I got to shake Rick Sutcliffe's hand.
Awesome. And Rick Sutcliffe, also a former Dodger.
Yes. Is he really?
He was Rookie of the Year with the Dodgers.
I met Ryan Sandberg. Yes, I knew that guy too, sort of. Yeah, I mean, my dad, huge Cubs fan, so I should probably give you his number. You guys can just talk till you just vomit. Yeah, it'll be ridiculous. I love that for you, though. Love it. Well, that's pretty good. I mean, no rapid fire needed because you had like
I knew you had a good story.
You zoned in on us. Yeah. Well, that's it for us right now for It's Fine, the official podcast of Broken Arrow Public Schools on the Arrow Vision Network. Once again, thank you, Adam, for joining us. And Mr. Greg Spencer, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And we had a great time. I learned a lot. I really did. I'm sure our listeners and viewers will also learn a lot too. So once again, this is brought to you by First National Bank of Broken Arrow, TTCU Federal Credit Union, Ascension St. John, Tulsa Bone Joint, and the Arrow Group. So until next time, thank you so much. We'll talk to you later.